Seattle 37, Carolina Panthers 27. The Seahawks moved to 2-1. Panthers fall to 0-3. Andy Dalton got the start for the Panthers, kept it close for a while, and the Seahawks
reasonably so.
The Seahawks pulled away, and run game was really good down the stretch for Seattle. Ken Walker and Zach Charbonnet looking good as the 1-2 punch that they envisioned. And look, you mentioned on the preview show, Andy Dalton right now probably gives the Panthers a better shot to win, which is true. I think we saw that. The Panthers were much more effective throwing the ball and moving the ball in this game. But you don't want Andy Dalton dropping back 67 times as he did in this game. That should not have been the ideal game plan for Carolina. So
yeah, well, the point was like, okay, look, nobody really wants Andy Dalton starting a game, right? Particularly not when you have Bryce Young, the number 1 overall pick, as the alternative. But there was a sense that this could at least give us a control to figure out how much of the current problems, right? The Panthers offense has been awful through the first 2 games. How much of this is Bryce Young? How much of this is the situation he's in is just not workable, right? And I think we did get a reasonable piece of information from this game, which is to say, look, the offensive line is still a problem, right? Andy Dalton didn't fix that. He didn't come in and all of a sudden the offensive line looks great, and actually Bryce Young was causing all those problems in pass protection. The offensive line still looked like garbage, and they look like garbage against a bad pass rushing team, right? So that's a pretty big thing. The offensive line is a problem. Now, what did change is the receivers didn't look like a complete waste of space. All of a sudden, Andy Dalton is able to find some places to go with the football. And look, DJ Chark has got some speed. He made a couple big plays. Chark hasn't always been there for Bryce Young. But Adam Thielen had 11 catches for 145 yards and didn't look like the ghost of Adam Thielen anymore.
Thielen did look pretty good. I mean, a lot of it, the short underneath stuff, which is fine. I mean, that's Dalton's game. The DJ Chark plays you mentioned, he had a 47-yard touchdown where he gets behind the defense, makes a nice cut on, I think it was Julian Love for the score. That big play, those big plays certainly have been lacking from the Panthers offense to this point. So yeah, I think Dalton played pretty well. You still see the issues, as you said, the offensive line. Carolina's they're just not a great team. And even though they hung tough, Seattle, I mean, I credit Seattle too, because I think I took Carolina because I said, hey, Seattle tends to play down to their competition. And that looked true for about 2.5, 3 quarters, but then Seattle showed they're a better team. And I always give credit to Geno Smith for bouncing back, because he had an ugly interception in this one. He threw one to the defense in the end zone, which didn't result in an interception, but he has this knack for doing that. I feel like I say it every week. But again, Geno Smith played well after mistakes. And so I think every time people might expect Geno Smith to be like, oh, this is why he was a backup, this is why he was a backup, still finds a way to get the ball to DK Metcalf, get the ball down the field, and make some big plays when they needed it.
The other thing, by the way, with this control experiment Andy Dalton thing is this was not just a bad Seattle pass rush, but it was a banged-up Seattle secondary as well. Now, they still had some good players out there. It's not like we've seen some pretty rough secondaries in the NFL where they have to go into the bench and then bringing in disastrous players. The Seahawks had to go into the bench, but, they're Devin Witherspoon, the first, draft pick, is playing extensively. Artie Burns, okay, that's your problematic spot. But Quandre Diggs, Julian Love, these are still good players that are on the field. No Jamal Adams. So it's not like it was catastrophic, but it is worth noting that this was not full strength. Tariq Woolen, or Reek Woolen as he's going by now, right?
Yes.
Wasn't playing, right? So that's a loss for them. So it's at least worth pointing that out. Devin Witherspoon, by the way, looked really good.
Yeah, your friend Walt in the chat's asking about Devin Witherspoon. He did look good.
He did. He looked really good. I mean, he was targeted a lot. 14.
2 pass breakups in there.
Yeah. He had a penalty in there as well, which, to be honest, looked fair. Pete Carroll was livid that they called the penalty on him.
I'm seeing it right now. That's the -1 here.
So
I'm going to grind film live on the air here.
It's illegal contact. I mean, he's shoving him, way past 5 yards. Now, it's the kind of shoving that happens.
That's hand fighting, man.
It's not hand fighting. He was like blocking him. He was literally
hand fighting.
It was illegal contact. He was in his way, shoving him backwards.
You could literally call illegal contact because corners and receivers are engaged down beyond 5 yards all the time.
No, that's not what was happening. That was college press coverage where you can legitimately jam the guy all the way down the field.
Tell me he's playing a little Illinois defense.
Yes. He was jamming the guy 15 yards downfield, and the ref was like, okay, you're taking the piss now and throwing the flag. Now, anyway, my point being, I think it was fair. Pete Carroll, noted defensive mind, was raging that they called that flag on him. Like, he was on that sideline and ran at the official to be like, what the hell? So, look, anyway, overall point, Devin Witherspoon, 14 targets, gave up 5 catches for 31 yards, which is nothing, had 2 forced incompletions, and the one big negative he has was at least a debatable pass interference call, or I think illegal contact.
I've said twice in the last 3 weeks, if Seattle doesn't rush the passer well this week, they've got some issues. I said it week 1 against the Rams, they didn't do well.
Yeah.
This week, though, they did. And, shout out to Mario Edwards Jr., who, former 5-star recruit from Florida State, former second-rounder, who will show these flashes a couple times a year. He had 8 pressures in this game. Jaron Reed, 6 pressures, couple sacks, including, one big one down the stretch in this game. So Mario Edwards Jr., Jaron Reed, rushed the passer extremely well in this one. For Seattle, taking advantage, as we mentioned, the banged up and poor Panthers offensive line.
Yeah. I mean, that's the offensive line is the area where, that's the problem for Bryce Young now. We've seen that the receivers can at least be functional. Andy Dalton can get that out of them. But that offensive line is hemorrhaging pressure, and that's not a great thing to put in front of a young quarterback.
All right, Seattle moves to 2-1, as I mentioned in this game.